What's up, everyone? Welcome to Joy of the Hobby podcast, episode 9, an Essential Credentials production. Happy to be back. Had a little bit of a break, which was nice. Got things recharged. And we decided that we would bring on one of our most prominent viewers on the episodes. And that is, of course, Luke, aka Red Legs Collector. Luke, how you doing tonight, man? Are you happy to be on here?
I am thrilled to be on here. I really appreciate the opportunity to jump on with you guys. I have literally never been on camera before.
All right. Well, this is going to be exciting then. And of course, joining me is my esteemed co-host, the Ichiro man himself, Ben. Ben, how's it going, dude?
It's going really well. I'm excited for this one. I do want to say my first time being on camera was when I just started doing this with Matt. I might have done we started with the essential credential stuff. Never been on camera before. It's not even really about that. It's just about talking about the cards, whatever with the camera. We're just having a good time chatting about a thing we enjoy. So I'm excited you're here. I love your enthusiasm anytime you're in our show, commenting, giving us something extra to talk about. So it was pretty easy. Kind of Matt pitched me. I was like, yeah, of course. He would be a great guy to have on. He's got a lot of stuff to say. He's clearly a hardcore collector. That's kind of the perfect person to have on and chat cards with.
Yeah. Absolutely. Yeah, it's going to be nice to have you on here. I know you did a great job of watching the Essential Credentials and providing some stuff for us to kind of bounce off one another when we were doing that. And obviously having you come on here, the theme is, talking about what we love about collecting. And I think it's pretty apparent that you are very much an enthusiastic collector, right? Somebody who just enjoys doing it, grew up in a similar era as we did and enjoys those really tough 90s cars just as much as some of the modern stuff that's out there. And it's been really fun to kind of see your collecting journey, especially I'm going to bring this one up when you got your light box, because I know how important photography is to me. And when Luke got his light box, it was like a kid in a candy store, man. He had he's like, I'm reshooting everything. I'm like, yeah, you're going to have a lot of fun just getting the cards to stand out. Ben, same thing with you, right? Like when you started really photographing them with the perfect lighting, it just brings your cards to life a little bit more. So it's nice to see that enthusiasm, but also just, your constant love for the hobby. So what we'll kind of do is we'll just kind of ask a few questions, kind of let the viewers get to know you a little bit more. They see you in the comments, obviously, but first time being on camera. So Ben, I'm going to throw it to you if you want to start us off, and then we'll just kind of, get to know Luke a little bit and then dive into our topic afterwards.
Yeah, so I think just so people can get to know you, Luke, what's the origin story for you getting into collecting? How did that start for you? How did you decide to collect what you do collect? How did all that stuff get started for you?
Well, for me, it's a long journey to where I am now because my collecting has changed so many times over the years. It started in I think 87 was the first time I remember really buying a lot of cards. I had some cards as a kid from 85 and 86, but 87 was when it was really got into it. And at that time I was buying everything, if it was at the grocery store, which is the only store we had in town. I grew up in a town of 500 people. We had a grocery store. They had boxes of cards at the checkout. Eventually the owner's son bought a little display case and started selling cards out of the grocery store, like a card shop. And so my brother and I would go in there and buy cards all the time. Then a lady opened a card shop across the street from the grocery store. So we had an actual card shop in town of, there was only 3 or 4 of us kids, and we went there. I don't know how she stayed in business, but we spent all of our time, because there was nothing else to do in town, in the card shop. I collected everything. I think I just have that collector's gene that I think we all have. And so it wasn't just my team or the Reds or a particular player. It was everything. I never ever got rid of anything. Rarely did I even trade as a kid, unless there was some kid who had something astronomical I'd never seen before. I might trade something for it. But really, I'm an accumulator more than anything. So
at that time, were you collecting sets then, because you were just collecting all the cards? Because really, in '87, there wasn't too many inserts or anything, right?
No, yeah. I mean, at that time, it was just buying pack. I was 8 years old when I really started buying packs. So at that time, you don't really have a comprehension of what sets are and companies are and brands are. It wasn't until I think 1990, Donruss, a card shop opened in the next town over, which was a bigger town, actually a small city. I went there. I won a door prize because on their grand opening, and won an entire box of 1990 Donruss. And
Crazy.
in my brain, it blew my mind. I'd never even seen a whole box of cards. I bought them by the pack. And so it was really in 90 or so that it picked up, and it really started getting into buying a bunch of stuff. And then, I had big binders. I would just put all the cards in by team and do it that way. Then there was a weird shift in the mid 90s. I got really heavy into playing baseball more than anything. I played in high school and college and loved baseball. Was my life, more than cards. The cards were a way to appreciate and enjoy the game.
Mhm.
And that's sort of still how it is today for me. And so I was heavy into baseball history. I was reading and learning everything I could about baseball history. I got into the Yankees and their franchise because of all of the legendary players and whatnot. So I got real heavy into that and sort of drifted away from really actively pursuing cards for a couple of years in high school. But when I got into college, there was a card shop near campus. Baseball was still everything I did: eat, breathe, sleep, baseball. So I started going to that card shop. And again, instead of buying by the packs, I was buying boxes in college and built a pretty massive collection of everything. Right around 2000, 2001, I was buying everything. When I graduated college, no more baseball. I'm not playing baseball anymore. I went to law school, and my wife moved to the same city where I went to law school. We were dating at the time. We got married in between my second and third year of law school. And at that time, I ended up selling everything I had as a kid.
Wow.
In order to buy Mickey Mantles. My goal was to get the full run of 52 to 69 Mickey Mantles.
Hey.
And so I sold all of my childhood collection and bought the majority of that run. I was only missing a couple of cards. And that's where my collection stayed for a few more years until then I dove right back into buying the team that I love. And I got rid of the Mantles, and I started buying Reds. And here we are. I now have what I consider 3 separate collections going at once right now.
Mm-hmm.
My real passion is my Larkin collection from the 90s, but just because I love the 90s cards. I mean, there's nothing that compares to them
Nope.
in the rest of baseball history. But I do love all of the eras of collecting and all the eras of cards. So I've got my Larkins from the 90s. I've got Reds Hall of Famer runs. So I collect every Reds Hall of Famer that ever played in a Reds uniform or managed as a Red. And I try to get their entire runs up through the years. The pre-war stuff is sort of what I'm working on now. I've got a checklist. There are some guys that maybe played 4 games for the Reds, but are Hall of Famers. And in 1914, there's not a lot of sets, and there's a lot of holes in the sets. And so finding something in a Reds uniform is a real challenge.
Mm-hmm.
So I got that going with all the vintage stuff and all the Hall of Famer runs. And then the modern stuff is what I use to connect to the game now. I try to get the first Bowman auto and some rare first Bowmans. And if they make the major leagues, rookie card, Topps Chrome rookie autos, and other sets that I like, because there's a few out there that are much more like 90s type inserts. And so I do get those. But that's just the way I connect with the prospects from draft day or international signing, and I follow them through the minor leagues. And so I've got a card of these guys, and the ones that I pick and I think that are good prospects, I buy their cards and then I watch them every night on minor league baseball TV. And so I can watch those games when I can have the Reds on the TV and I can have, the Louisville Bats on my tablet or my phone and watch them at the same time. And so I follow those kids up through the minors because I bought their cards and it gives me a way to connect to them. And so when they make the majors, I've already got their cards. I don't do a lot of collecting of guys that are already in the majors because I already bought their cards.
Mm.
I got to say, that's a really smart way to create a special connection with a card, right? Is by watching a player through the minors. Because we all, as collectors that started collecting when we were younger, in some sense, have like the nostalgic collection or nostalgic like relationship to some of our cards, or even that we still pick up 90s stuff because of that connection. But there is something about like watching a guy from like draft day or getting signed work his way up from like low A all the way up and actually like get a call up. It's like a totally different thing when you've got the card, his first Bowman, and you like watch him through the whole thing and you go, yeah, he did it. And I had his card from the beginning. Like, it's another fun way that I haven't really thought about that creates like an emotional connection to the cards, right?
Right. And that's sort of in a way, that's what I do with my Larkin collection is that I love the 90s cards. And so my thought process is, well, how do I get into those cards and sets that I love? And I love the Reds. I watched the Reds. I watched the Reds growing up. They won the World Series in 1990. I was 10 years old. That was
huge,
a pretty special thing. And then all through the 90s, they were pretty decent. Larkin won the MVP in 95 and was even better. First 30-30 shortstop in 96. And so when I look back on that era, what do I want to collect from these awesome cards from the 90s? It's, well, Larkin is the Reds Hall of Famer from the 90s. He grew up in Cincinnati. Right. He played from 87 through 2004. He's the only one. There's not really any overlap there other than.
Yeah, that's true.
I did a run to try to, I went through 1951 tops all the way through 2024 and pieced together Hall of Famers in Reds uniforms that played for the Reds at the time. And there are no Reds Hall of Famers that played from 51 through 56 tops. So I sort of substituted Ted Kluszewski because to me, he's a Hall of Famer. I mean, his career was too short, but otherwise he was a Hall of Fame level
and a
player.
very, very unique, great player.
So I can go from Kluszewski in 51 up through 56, and then Frank Robinson in 57.
Yep.
And then once you get into the 60s, when you have, I consider Pete Rose a part of that group. So Pete Rose in 63 and Tony Perez in 65. Joe Morgan wasn't on the Reds until the 70s, but then once Johnny Bench comes in 68, then you can go all the way through. Well, there's a period there from 87. Well, if you count Pete Rose's manager cards from 89 up through 2004, where there aren't any other Reds players that are Hall of Famers until Griffey makes the Reds in 2000.
Right.
So Larkin's the only one in the 90s. So if I want to collect a Reds Hall of Famer that fits the rest of my collection, it's Larkin anyway. So it just sort of all comes together. I loved watching Larkin. He had an impact on me as a kid. I love the Reds. I collect the Reds Hall of Famers. I love the 90s. And so those all converge. Barry Larkin, PC of the 90s. And that's what I do.
Well, it's got to be interesting too, because he is quite a popular player. I don't know if people would think that right off the hop, but Ben Schneider, he was the first one that one of the first guys who I ever saw post videos, and he was posting some of the 90s cards, and he had collected vintage before he got into 90s inserts, right? So I'm always curious, like, when you found your way into that era of cards, like you were actively collecting like we were, you're probably, able to afford maybe a little bit more at the time, but like, what exactly, when you think about that era, like what stands out so much about that era and makes it so exciting for you to collect even now?
Well, I think we all understand the diversity of what was happening in the 90s. There was such a transition period in cards.
Right.
like I said, if I started collecting in 87 and we went from, there were 3 brands and then Score comes along in 88. And for a few years, that's all there really was. Even as a new brand comes in, it's just another set to collect. But I lived through, and during my most passionate years of collecting, the early 90s was when those inserts, those numbered cards start. I mean, when Donruss Elite came out in 91, I never saw one. I mean, I saw them in Beckett. I opened countless packs of 91 Donruss, 92 Donruss, and never saw one. So that was a chase that a kid just couldn't resist. There was something out there that was unattainable, it seemed like, but you wanted it.
Yep.
And so it really fueled that desire to get those rare cards. And then from there, it just started getting lower and lower numbers and cooler cards because everybody's competing.
Yep.
To me, Stadium Club was a very big deal, and maybe not for everybody else. It's my touching of the hobby might be different than somebody else's, but there was a guy that I knew. He was an older guy, all through my childhood, that collected cards. And to me, that was interesting because I didn't know any adults that collected cards, but this guy was in his 50s and collected cards, and he was close with Topps. He was members of all of their clubs and programs. And so when they came up with the idea of Stadium Club, they sent him sample cards of them. And there was like this folder that he had pulled out, and it was like attached in the folder, a sample from 1991 Stadium Club. And that was like, awesome. Whoa, what is this? This is not like anything I've ever seen before.
Right.
And while other companies were doing those same type of premium products, and they began at that same time to start competing with one another to who can out premium the next company, and Pinnacle comes along and they make a brand and they say, this is our premium brand. Well, then Topps comes out and now here's Finest, and your premium brand now looks like junk. And so Pinnacle comes up, well, here's our premium brand. And they just keep trying to one up one another.
Uh-huh.
And here I am as a kid just reaping the benefits of all of that because I go to the card shop and there's just so much cool stuff.
Mm-hmm.
Right. No, that's it's so funny. Ben, are you also like going through like the progression, like 91, 92, like, and like one little nice thing, all of a sudden we get to like 95 and it just like,
I'm seeing it in my head, and like I'm remembering I mean, when I first started collecting, I didn't really get until like 95, 96, but I remember looking back the few years before that and going like, wait, they were putting autographs in packs in like 1990? That's like crazy they even did that. Because even by 96, it wasn't like a big thing until that Leaf Signature Series just put them in like almost every pack. But until then, autos were still not really a thing. It was like Upper Deck did them a few years. And then it was kind of like, is this still going to happen? And then I'm thinking like 93 Finest, and just as I started collecting, every time I went to the hobby shop, there was like something new. It was crazy. Like every time I went, it was like, oh, this is a new thing they're doing. This is a new thing that's happening. Like as a kid, you're just eating it up. You love variety when you're getting into something. Yeah. And so it was like perfect timing. That's what makes it so fun to go back and collect that era. And I still learn stuff or find something new, which is crazy. Something can be 30 years old and you're like, huh? They did what? I've never even heard that was a thing they did.
Right. Well, and what's great too is, Luke, you've been around since like the early days of that Facebook group, right? All of us have. And there was some really fun times in that Facebook group, the 90s Facebook group, where you'd have that discovery, like Joe Schmo would pull out this sample card that nobody had ever heard of. And it wasn't just the fact that the card was being shown, it was the story behind like you're saying, oh yeah, I knew this older collector who got this sample and he kept it for 10 years and he gave it to me and I've had it for 20 years and here it is. And it was so fun. And I think that era led to so much discovery and so many friendships being built even pre-COVID, to just all of us sharing within that same passion and pinnacle, no pun intended, of collecting. I mean, as nice as Modern is and everything that you can find for any player you could ever want and all the different technologies that we're using now. I mean, the 90s is where it all started, right? And I think it's something that we all look back fondly on, and it's just fun to hear about especially for somebody who's collecting pre-90s, like 80s where it's just sets, right? And then Elite comes out, and Elite series are just these like unicorns that, like all of us, we just saw them in Beckett, like didn't even think we'd ever see one. And I think when I think back, for me, like the first premium insert I think of is the Kramer's Choice from 96, right? I think it's just, that was just such a novelty looking card. And they were 1 out of 720 packs, and nobody ever saw them, right?
Mm-hmm.
You ever saw them in a card shop. So those are some of the like that card. And then I'm trying to think, there was a couple others probably from usually Pacific. They always stood out to me, but it just seems like Beckett was the place, right? So I'm kind of curious for all of us, like, was Beckett really it? Do you ever remember seeing any of these unicorns out in the wild, like especially of like Larkin or Bonds or whatever? Like, I'll go to you first, Ben. Like, what was the first unicorn you saw out in the wild from the 90s?
I was in a bigger market in Charlotte, North Carolina, so I had more access. There's a few card shows every year and a couple card shops in the area. And the first unicorn I ever saw was the 1997 Upper Deck Game Used Jersey Tony Gwynn. Wow. That was the first one I ever saw, and it was in the shop. They had pulled it, and it sat there for about a year with $100 price tag on it, which is like, right. At that age, I was 10. So like it might as well be $100 million. Like the $100 is to compute when you're 10 years old. It's like impossible money. But that's the card that I ended up, that same year I pulled a Charizard holographic first edition, ran to the store with it, traded them 1-to-1, that Charizard for the Tony Gwynn. And I still have that one. So the first unicorn I ever saw, I ended up getting because it sat in that card shop. I mean, $100 card was just crazy. And that was like 98. No one paid $100 for any single card.
Not often. What about you, Luke?
Yeah, that's the same thing that I had to have the first unicorn card that I saw. Yeah. And I was just mentioning Elite. It was actually 93 Elite. My buddy across the street, like I said, there weren't many of us in town. It was a small town, and we didn't have a lot of money. And the kid across the street's dad owned a big business in town. He had what seemed to me like a lot of money. I don't know whether it's a lot of money now. But he had things. He had a 79 Ozzie Smith. He had an 80 Ricky Henderson. He had this 69 Tom Seaver that blew my mind. And so he seemed to have everything. Mm-hmm. And one day he has a 1993 Elite Fred McGriff. I mean, and I didn't care about Fred McGriff. He was on the Padres at the time, I think. And he had that, and I had to have. That was the coolest thing I'd ever seen because I just seen him in Beckett. I just heard stories of those rumors. Cards, and so that was what it was for me. Was I had never seen a 91 or a 92 Elite in person, really, until I was a full-on adult. I had never seen one, but the 93, I saw that Fred McGriff and traded him something for it. I don't even remember what, but I got it from him. The next year, my brother ended up pulling a Griffey 94 Elite, which was really the last year where Elite meant something.
Yeah.
But even the 94s weren't the same as the 93s and the 92s. And so yeah, it had to be Elite. The Finest, when that came out, that was a big deal in 93. But to me, Elite was unattainable because you just never saw them from packs. Finest was there. You could get a refractor in every box, but the lady that owned our card shop had it on the top shelf, and it was $20 a pack. It sat there. I don't know that she ever sold any of them, but I wasn't buying a $20 pack of cards when I was 13 years old or whatever. So that was just a dream that, it'd be great to have these Finest refractors, but I didn't even know what a refractor was. When 94 came out, it was affordable. I bought packs of 94 Finest. And I remember just going through the packs, trying to figure out what in the world is a refractor. What does it look like? They just said, you'll know when it's shiny, or you'll know it when you see it. Well, I had no clue.
Yeah, no, that's actually kind of funny to think about that because they're so prominent now, right? I mean, they don't mean anything, honestly, unless they're colored red or they're a super fractor. But it's really fun to think back to. Even like the Elite series, some of those cards that, don't really carry a lot of value now, but really did back then. It's not like they got any less rare or more rare. They are what they are, but just I think the nostalgia really kicks in, right? And you think about how special those cards are. And I'm trying to like go through my head of like the whale, because certain cards are so unobtainable, like you don't even want to really look at them because you don't want to have dreams of owning them when it says $100, $200, $300 on there, right? I used to go to, as Ben heard, I used to go to this card shop in the Seattle Tacoma Mall. You know, so my dad would pick me up from the airport and we'd go to the mall, and there was a card shop right there in the mall. And those were the good old days, right? Because those don't exist anymore really. But used to go in there all the time, and just I remember just seeing like there was always the Griffey case, right? And there was just the craziest stuff in there, you know, artist proofs and you know, the jersey cards and all that stuff. And it's fun to think back to those times. And then here we are owning these cards that were pretty much whales, you know, not to mention some of the crazy cards that are whales as adults, you know. Like I think Luke, you were in here and told us about how excited you were when you bought the Mirror Gold, right? Wasn't that like numero uno on the list for a really long time?
I honestly, I didn't even think it was a possibility that I would have gotten that card. I was still, and for many years was on the search for the 98 Crusade Red. That was my break card. That's all I really cared about. That was the number one card. And so the Mirror Gold was sort of on the back burner, like one of those things, like I'm probably never going to see it. And then when that set sold as a set, I was out there putting out feelers, like if this ever gets broken up and sold individually, I would love to try to make a connection to do that. This is one of those stories where the community is how I ended up with that card.
Nice.
Because I don't have those connections. I'm new to social media for the most part. I don't even have social. I mean, the only reason I have a Facebook account is so that I can join the Facebook group. I don't have any friends on Facebook. I don't even have a profile. I don't have anything. It's just to connect with other collectors. And thankfully, people who have connections, you know, reached out to me. You mentioned Ben Schneider. He was the one, I think originally they had reached out to him when that set got broke up and do you want this? And well, you've seen his collection. He has everything. So he didn't need it. And so he messaged me and said, hey, this is available. I don't need it. If you want it, I can link you up with, you know, the sellers and work that out. And at the time I was like, well, I wasn't really looking for this card and it's a very expensive card.
Yeah.
What do I want to do? I was on my way to work when I think they reached out about that card. And so I texted my wife and we talked about it, which is an important part. Anytime I buy a big card, you know, I'll buy lots of 10, 15, 20, $50 cards, whatever. But anytime I'm buying a big card, it's something I talk to my wife about. I'm usually really hesitant to do it. I don't like spending a lot of money on one card. Right. But she's usually an encouragement to me about, no, if you want it, and I know you know what you're doing, just buy it. And so she usually pushes me over the edge, and that's when I ended up buying that card. It just sort of fell in my lap, and thankfully because of the community.
I will say that's a really awesome thing to have too, because you really, with a big card like that, don't want to have like a guilt surrounding owning a piece like that, right? Like you want to know like this was supported, everything was cool, we were all above board, and like that's the memory I have tied to it. Is like, what a fun memory to have. And said, like she said, go do it. This is a thing you might not see. Like, go get it.
Right.
Now you have that, like, oh, I was encouraged to get this thing.
Right.
Now
it's funny because she,
gorgeous.
Right.
Yeah, she knows the hobby. It seems like she has an instinct for it that I don't often have. Even she knew nothing about baseball and baseball cards before we met, but she got into it because she wanted to participate in the things that I enjoy, which is what a wife and a friend does. And so I'm interested in her hobby. She's interested in mine. And well, she took to baseball. She liked softball as a kid, so she took to baseball as well. And since that's my number one passion, she started getting into cards as well. So we go to shows together. She buys cards. she collects a different team. She chose her own team so that she wasn't competing with me for cards, and
Smart.
and so we, we enjoy the hobby together. But like when that Crusade first came up for auction the first time, I had an expectation of what I thought it was going to go for. She said, no, it's going for this amount. And
Awesome.
and I put in a bid that was like nearly twice what I thought it was going to go for. And I lost out by one bid, and she had pegged exactly what it was going to end at.
Wow.
She was like, no, I told you that's what it was going to go for. So it was pretty wild. She knew that market better than I did.
I want to follow up on that too, because again, the theme of our podcast is joy, and it's a pretty, it's easy to see that, your family, your wife are a part of what make it fun for you. And if I'm being completely honest, I don't obviously know a lot of the people that watch, nor do I know all the people in the 90s group, but I feel like even the core people that we met, Ben, in the early days, there was this like stigma of like, no, I'm not going to tell my wife how much I spent on this Ken Griffey Jr. card or this A-Rod or Bonds or whatever. But it seems like you've got it kind of from the other side, right? She's your biggest supporter and like trying to help you add these amazing cards to your collection, which I'm just going to say, like, that would make it tons of fun for anybody, I would think. But was it something like, how were you able to kind of manifest that from the early days? Like, was it just like, this is my passion, like, this is what I love, and she just was kind of on board? Or is it something that you guys kind of discussed along the way? Because I think for people watching, it would be great to hear, or maybe give them some food for thought. Like, maybe I should open up this door of communication a little bit more, And
follow up, is it related to you selling and switching to just the mantles for a while?
Good one,
it seems like that might be the same time period.
Yeah.
That's interesting. We've been married for 21 years. So I think it just sort of was an organic thing. I had all my cards when we met one another. I already had a huge collection from my childhood and through all of the things I was buying in college, because we met when I was in college. And so she knew I collected cards. She knew that I had a passion for them. She cared about my hobby. In fact, the day that I didn't tell her, we weren't married yet, but I didn't tell her that I was going to sell all those cards to buy those mantles. And it sort of like, it didn't make her upset, but it sort of broke her heart in the sense that, I can't believe you got rid of something that I know you care so much about.
Oh, interesting.
And so I explained to her what I was going to be doing. I was going to utilize this money and go buy some other cards that I care about. And she got all of that. And she's always taken to my hobbies. But as we've grown together over the years, like best friends do, you take an interest in one another's interests. And since that's my interest, that's what I care the most about is baseball and baseball cards, is that she's grown into that. And it was only relatively recently, I say recently, 5 or 6 years or so, when I really got heavily into the Reds cards again. And that was sort of precipitated by another relationship, which was my brother and his son. My brother's son got into it really heavy into the Reds, and it's all he cared about. I mean, you know how we were at 8, 9, 10 years old. It was our life, and that's how he was. And he loved cards so much, and I loved seeing that in my nephew. And so I would buy him cards. Like for his birthday, I'd go out and buy a big card that I know he would never purchase, and I'd get him something that I thought he would really like. And through that, it allowed me to connect not just with my nephew, who I really didn't have as much connection with because we live 3 hours away. It's a 3-hour drive, almost 2.5 hours. But it also then allowed me to reconnect with my brother a lot over those things, because we were collecting buddies when we grew up. There wasn't a lot of other kids in town, so we collected together. And then over the years, we grow apart. He went to college in Virginia, and I'm still here in Ohio. And then we come back and we start families hours apart. And so we sort of drifted away there, and it was a way for us to get back in connection. So my brother-in-law or my brother and I are constantly texting about cards and sending pictures of cards, and we go to card shows together, and
Nice.
we're doing all that, and so it allowed me to get back and collecting with him. And as a part of that, then my wife sees all of that and wants to also be a part of my hobby, and so I'm thankful for that. I'm not a very extroverted person. I don't have a lot of friends because I don't want a lot of friends. It's just how I am as far as in real life.
Mhm.
And I was never connected on social media. So my collecting world was very small. And so to have my wife, my daughter, who also has taken an interest in collecting, and then my brother and his son, that was my collecting community. And in the family. So we planned trips around going to card show. Like when we go to the National, we plan a family vacation and we go spend a week in Chicago and go sightseeing and do all these things in addition to go to the show. We hit up all the baseball stadiums in the area and go to baseball games. This year we planned our entire vacation around spring training and went out to Arizona and watched all the spring training games.
Oh,
It's
man.
just it's just a way for the family to connect over our passion. So
Yeah, I love that.
Such a good reminder. I think that's kind of a theme we've started to have running through our episodes here, starting with joy. And we've slowly found out that a lot of the joy comes from the connections in the hobby, whether that be family connections or friend connections in the hobby. It's really what makes it so fun. And I totally see where your wife is coming from, seeing like you forming a bond with your brother again and your nephew and going like, well, I want to be a part of that too. Even maybe the cards are almost secondary, but like having that relationship and that communication is like, so how often do we talk, Matt? And it's like some about cards, but it's just talking. We're just like,
Yeah.
we have like a relationship now just through
Yeah.
the hobby.
For
I
sure.
think that's such an important part of making it fun outside of just the cards. And the cards themselves are great. And you get a new light box, and all of a sudden you love your cards again. But really, having the light box, taking new pictures, and then being able to send those pictures to a buddy and go, look at how much cooler this picture is now,
Right.
is like the creme de la creme of enjoying a card.
I almost get more joy out of photographing my cards than I do when I pull them out and look at them. And when I get a new card, it goes immediately from the package to the light box.
Yeah.
And I'm photographing it and trying to get the best pictures I can. I catalog my entire collection. I don't use a spreadsheet. I use albums on my phone for photos. So everything is done photo.
No, that's awesome. I can relate to, and I think we're similar. Ben and I are similar, but I'll say for myself though, like just in life, I have, very few friends, less than a dozen, but even half a dozen that are close, good friends. And like a couple of them are in this hobby, a couple of them are not, but like, yeah, I'm not somebody who's constantly out there, but I will say I kind of was able to come out of my shell through the hobby, right? Like that Facebook group really opened me and I think some other people up to like when you go to the National. Well, now I'm looking forward to meeting Luke or Greg, obviously, and Alan and all these people because we share that common bond of collecting and the love of sports, right? And I think it's such an amazing thing that the hobby can do because it's a basis to get you connected. But then you end up being friends with people that if you take the cards and put them out of the conversation, maybe there's not a whole lot there at first, right? But it ends up being a great catalyst for friendship. And I think the community is really why I think we're all still here in a way, whether it's your community at home, Luke, or like Ben and I doing a podcast together, or me and Greg and Alan, like there's a commonality there. And I think you remove that aspect because, yeah, it's great to be sitting here with all your great cards, but does it really mean anything if you can't share in the joy with your closest friends in the hobby? Like, I just feel like it would be kind of an empty endeavor, right? Or sharing it with your family or your friends at home. Like, I think that's a commonality that people should always be thinking about because once you lose that, like, then what is there, right?
Right. Which kind of sort of leads me to the other question of, you mentioned you did the Manals, then you kind of sat on the Manals minus a few of his run for a few years, and then like you started to get back into it. What was the spark or like the thing? Because I know I have a similar story. I sat on what I had for many years, didn't really pick anything up new, sold a few things even in that period, like I don't really like this, whatever. And there was like kind of a spark around 2017, 2018 where I kind of pulled my collection back out after a move, and like for me, it was just seeing the cards again and being like,
Yeah,
oh,
for me,
and then, yeah. So what was it for you?
I had the Mantle collection. I had taken it to my office, so that's where it sat. I had it on display in my office, and so I could look at it every day and enjoyed having it there. And so I didn't feel like I needed necessarily to do anything else with it. It was bringing me joy, but it just sat there. It was a stale joy, if you would, not moving at all.
Right.
And then, like I said, I'm a collector at heart, and so I sort of also, since I wasn't adding to that collection much, it was essentially done. I started collecting vintage firearms and some other things. You know, I'm a shooter and a firearms instructor, and on the side and do those things. And so I was collecting old Colt revolvers and things like that. And so at the same time, that was helping keep my collecting itch scratched a little bit. But as I just mentioned, it was really the connection with my nephew that switched back to, okay, I've gotten a lot of joy out of these cards, but there's something else here that I'm missing in my collecting, and I'm moving this direction, and I'm going all in on the things that I love about baseball and the Reds, and that you know, I was watching all the time baseball, but it wasn't the same. I don't know how to explain it. Baseball has always been a passion of mine. But when I wasn't actively collecting baseball cards, I was just sitting on the collection and enjoying it. I didn't enjoy the game as much, and I wasn't as passionate about that. And as soon as I started buying cards for my nephew, I realized that passion is back, and I don't want to lose that. And so that's what it was.
Funny that I have a very similar story that I was watching baseball and keeping up with it in the early 2010s, but when I started getting cards again, oh man! Now I mean I have the MLB channel, play for the package every season. Watch the games are on in the back. I work from home, so I just have the games on in the background like all day. I don't have a specific team because I just kind of collect and like to watch players and their development in a way. Kind of like you, I want to watch a prospect and watch them kind of play through a couple seasons and develop. But I don't think I'd watch 5% of the baseball I watch if I wasn't collecting cards. Like they really do go hand in hand. It makes it so much fun to be engaged in the sport. And then there's a whole other community on that side, right? And we're seeing more people from the sports side come in and be interested in the cards because the athletes are a little more interested in the cards. Like you never heard a 90s guy talking about his baseball cards. Now you see these younger guys in the sport like wanting to trade for their one of ones, and you see some of this stuff where there's like more engagement between the hobby and the actual players. That's just made it like even more fun to watch and collect at the same time.
It's like it just connects you so much deeper to the athlete. You know what I mean? In a I don't know, say a weird way, but like, you know, I really enjoy watching SGA play, and they won today, so that's exciting. But getting a few of his cards was awesome, right? Because you're like, oh, that picture reminds me of him doing this move, and like now I want to follow his career more. And it's the same with different Mariners. I have to be careful because all of you know, being a Mariners fan is full of disappointment. So whenever I get excited about buying Julio Rodriguez cards, I mean, yeah, we're in the same boat. Yeah, I mean, it's like, oh, now he's hitting 200 for the season. So happy I have these cards, you know. But where it comes in the 90s, I think is Alan had mentioned this a few times, and he's right. It's like they've achieved what they've achieved. Barry Larkin is a Hall of Famer, lifetime 300 hitter or 299. I can't remember. It's right up there. But like he's a stud, and he'll always be a stud, right? Same with Barry Bonds. Same with Ken Griffey Jr., Mariners A-Rod. We're not going to talk about the rest of it, but those guys are so established and fun, but there's a finite amount of cards to collect for them, right? So that's why I like sprinkling the modern in there a little bit, right? Like there's always going to be new cards of De La Cruz, and there's always going to be new cards of probably Joey Votto still, as great as he was. But I think it's nice to have that balance. It's awesome to hear that you have like different collections going on too, because Ben and I have talked about like how important it is to have like little side quests going on, as you've heard us talk about here, because it keeps it fun.
to the point of us watching the sport and collecting, like I have a little small Ellie De La Cruz collection of some of his rookie and Bowman first stuff just because I like the way he plays.
Yeah, he's a
If I
beast.
weren't watching baseball, I would not have a single one of his cards. Like I watched, he was a highly rated prospect, came up young, like is cool, and I would have watched some highlights, but now I like make sure to watch their games because
Right.
I've got some cards now and it's kind of symbiotic. It's like they're related in a way. Like I might have one of his cards. Now I have like a little mini collection because I just like this style of play and how exciting.
Well, and I see it branch out. If you collect prospects like that, which I do, so I pick a guy who's signed by the Reds or drafted by the Reds, and I'm watching him in the minor leagues. Well, as you know, minor league guys don't always stay on their minor league teams.
No.
They get traded around because prospects are capital in the baseball world. So they get moved around. And so now I've got guys that I was watching that were drafted by the Reds are now traded to the Mariners or traded to the Twins or somewhere else. And now I'm watching them and following them in their careers. So, so now that I'll check the box score for, 10 different teams, because I wasn't able to watch them that day just to see how those guys did that I collected. And so it connects me to way more teams than just one. It branches out of all of the teams.
Matt and I have talked about it. I'm watching Jacob Wilson. I'm watching the Athletics play now because he's exciting and different.
Dude, he finally got a hit tonight, man. He worked today.
I know.
He's struggling. He's on the struggle bus for a bit, but and you know what's crazy? I don't even know why I didn't think about it. His dad's Jack Wilson. Makes perfect sense.
Oh yeah,
You watch Jack Wilson hit in the day. It's like, oh well, of course his son would be like move his feet 5 million times in the box. Like, guy's nuts in a good way. Want to show this comment by Henry, which is pretty cool. So our town is having a card show June 14th, Salem, Oregon. I hope it's the first card show in 25 years I can go to. Better not be 90% modern. Well, get ready for that. Just be thankful. It's hopefully not going to be Wemby all over the place. You might have more baseball.
Yeah. I will say, even if it is that, though, the guys that aren't just the modern or super modern stuff will be there, and they're always fun to talk to. Like, they came out to the show. They're going to sit there the whole time. They'll entertain your conversation and just having fun chatting cards, too. Like, sometimes, many times I've walked away from a card show with nothing or one card, but had fun just chatting with people who, like, had stuff on the table that was, like, in the 90s era or specific kind of play or oddball kind of collection of cards they had on the table. And you're just like, hey, how did you get into that? That's kind of interesting. Right. Your table is different. So it can still be fun. Even if only 10% of the tables are cool, I bet all those people will be fun to talk to.
For sure. And I think that, that was what was so fun about going to the National for the first time, was just connecting with different people. Luke, did you have a similar experience when you went there? I mean, obviously you got to see Greg and maybe some other collectors that from the group, but did you have that experience when you were there? You would stop at a table and have a quick chat with somebody?
I don't know. My wife and I have been going to the National for a number of years. Well, my daughter too. And so when I go, I got to see everything. So and it's such a big show that it's hard to. I don't do a lot of stopping and talking at the National. We go to a lot of other card shows. Thankfully, in Ohio and our area, there's a lot of shows to go to. So we go to a lot of smaller shows, and those shows, we stop and talk to the dealer. And in fact, usually I'm going through the tables looking at cards, and my wife, I give her a list of cards and say, hey, if you can track these down. And so she's usually one spending hours talking to the dealers at the card tables. And
cool.
But I don't do a lot of talking to people at the National just because I'm going table to table looking for stuff. And especially when you're looking for 90s stuff, there might be 2 or 3 tables at the National that are worth looking at for 90 stuff. So you have to go to every table to see if you can find it.
That's true. I realized after my first year, you have to strategize, and first day do the quick pass. I do the float thing too, Luke, where it's just like float. You have your eyes just scanning, looking for like a 96, 97 of anything in the table. You're like, if they don't have that, then I know there's nothing here. And it's like second day, you go a little slower. You like earmark a couple tables and try to go like, I'm going to chat with this guy because maybe he's close enough. Maybe he's got some stuff in a case behind that's not on display that's in the right era. Chat with him a little bit.
Yeah, I'll stop and talk to a dealer who has 90 stuff and ask him, those guys. My wife, thankfully, loves to dig through boxes. So
Oh, that's
To
helpful.
me, I don't have time to do that. I'm going to find the tables that have the big 90s cards, and she's digging through the boxes to find those hidden gems of the 90s stuff that people don't even know what they have. And so I'm constantly getting messages from her on my phone of, here's a picture. Do you have this card? Do you want this card? Is this a rare card? It looks neat. And so she's doing the digging while I'm doing the showcase looking.
Man, can I just jump in here and say that like Luke is living the dream. All right. Like not only does he pick up just about anything that like not anything he wants, but like you pick up a variety of cards, you got your different collections. You're like, I'm going to grab that. Whereas like Ben and I are very like structured with what we're grabbing for the most part. And now you've got your wife out there helping you find cards. Like, yeah, you got whatever the recipe for success is. If you'd ever like to share it with us, let us know. But no, I think that's awesome, right? I think it goes whether it's your wife or your buddies that are there. I remember we would be texting each other pictures all the time our first year in Chicago, and Ben knows, right? Like,
Oh, yeah.
hey, do you need this? Hey, do you need this? Like, those will always be the most, like, bring me the most joy in this hobby. And again, going back, it's connections, right? Time with your friends and family that you're building that, and it just makes it so much more fun, right? And so I think it's always great to talk about those things because it's so easy to go to a card show. I've done it when I've gone by myself, put the earbuds in, get the music cranking, and I just lock in and hit every box. And I'm kind of like in, ghost mode, not really interacting. And sometimes you have to, right? But I think it's way more fun when it's kind of a team effort, right? But I think the last thing we wanted to talk to you about, I know Ben and I are very curious to hear your take, and we've kind of got some things from you already. But, Luke, you've been watching this since our first episode. Really appreciate that. We did our episode about goals, right? About how we wanted to approach collecting this year and be a little more structured. I live in a very expensive place to live. Ben, he's got a family, he's got a house and all these things. So there's always money heading in other directions. But we like the idea of challenging ourselves to be very specific in what we're grabbing. Up until last week, I've been doing great with that. But I'm excited.
I broke from my strictness.
Oh, yeah, we almost made it halfway, but I'm really curious. I know we both like to hear just kind of when you're hearing us talk about that and then knowing that your approach is a little different, why does your approach work so well for you? Because you are like, that card looks awesome. I need that. Boom. Got it. Like that Larkin you grabbed the other day or a modern card. Like, how are you able to approach collecting on a much more wider variety? And why is that fun to do that?
Well, I'm not sure it's as different as you think it is. I'm also very focused, and I don't just buy everything. I'm blessed to be in a position where if those big cards come up that rarely come up, that I can go out and get those if I need to.
Right.
But that's still a big purchase. It's a big deal. I talk about it with my wife. We discuss the finances of it all. And I don't do a lot of additional small purchases. I do, we all have that addiction to eBay sometimes where we say, I really want this 93 Stadium Club first day. And so I'm going to go buy it right now because it's $11. Those 11, 10, 11, 12, dollar cards. Yeah, I'll buy a few of those. But essentially, we've talked about this before on your podcast, is that I have that list of cards that are, here's my list of non-one of one, buy it when I see it. And when those pop up, I buy them. If those don't pop up for a year or 2 years at a time, not one of them doesn't show up, I'm not buying anything big. Right. So I can sort of do it that way. And most of what else I buy, the vintage stuff, it can get expensive in really high grades, but for the most part, it's not real expensive. It's abundant. It's not rare in any way. So I can buy a full Hall of Famer run of Pete Rose or Tom Seaver for, the entire run of their career in a decent mid-grade copies of their rookies and early cards. And, for less than I would buy a big Larkin card for, I can have all their cards. So, so it's not super expensive. The modern stuff, like I said, I try to limit it and restrict it to, I just buy First Bowman auto, Topps Chrome rookie auto, And then for special players like Ellie, I've got a lot of Ellie cards, just because, he's electric. And so if I find cool stuff, Hunter Green, I really like Hunter Green. I was a pitcher, and he's a fantastic person, young man, pitcher. He's got it all. So I've got a decent Hunter Green collection. I was pretty passionate about Jonathan India. He's now on the Royals, and he's one of those guys that I still follow now. But I have a big Jonathan India collection because the dude plays baseball the way baseball should be played. I love it. He's what we would call a dirt bag. He's just loves to go out and get dirty and play baseball, and my kind of guy. So those guys, I'll buy a handful more, or maybe I'll chase a rainbow of a particular card. But for the most part, it's relatively focused and it's inexpensive to do, which leaves me in a position where if I'm just buying little cards here and there, where when those big ones pop up, I feel like I can go ahead and do it without having to sell a bunch of cards to get them. I'm just not a seller. There's nothing about selling that I enjoy.
Well, if you don't need to do it.
You're right. I've thought of when the Crusade prototype set came up for sale on Facebook on the 90s group. That was a set I didn't even know was out there. I mean, I knew the cards existed, but I didn't know the Larkin set was complete and out there and would ever be on the market. And I was just sitting on the couch one day on a Saturday afternoon. My wife and I were watching baseball, and I see it posted, and I'm like, "Oh my! This is one of those things you don't let pass by." So I immediately had to talk to my wife. She was like, "You better get that then." And I said, "Well, I don't really want to spend 4 figures on these cards. That's just crazy." And I was like, "Well, how about this? How about I sell my Pete Rose rookie and my Tom Seaver rookie, and that'll pay for these." And she's like, "Well, whatever, you don't have to do that." And I posted them for prices that I knew would probably not sell for. And
we've done that.
Yeah.
They sat there for a couple of days, and eventually I'm like, why am I doing this? I'm just going to want to go buy this card again. And I'm too much of a collector to even live with a hole in a player run like that, where I'm missing the big card from their player run.
Yeah.
So I just get to the point where it's not worth it to me to try to sell things, to buy other things. I guess if I had to, I bought a couple big cards this year already. And so maybe if something really big popped up, I might, feel like I had to do something like that. But, thankfully, I haven't been in that position yet where a bunch of them pop up at the same time. So
I also think what I'm hearing from you that's a slightly different perspective from Matt and I is because you're so tied in with the sport and the Reds, you're able to have like a lot of different what we call like side quests, right? You can have the pre-war vintage, then the Hall of Fame guys on the run, then the current guys you're watching, and your 90s guy. And so you have all these different lanes that you can kind of like touch on. You can get a $10 card here, something here. Oh, a pre-war guy shows up. It's, $105 to get that 1918 card that you don't really see that often, but you're able to kind of like mix and match and kind of keep interested in all these different lanes, which is probably why you're like, oh, he might be picking up more cards, Matt, than you and I, but it's all for like a purpose for one of these things you're kind of working on. Yeah, it's all kind of the same umbrella.
Sort of direct them at different outlets too. If I wanted to collect my pre-war Reds Hall of Famers, I could go on eBay and find all of those cards immediately and just buy them all. But what I typically do is eBay, Facebook groups, online is for my Larkin collection, because those cards just don't show up. And if I wanted to restrict it to just buying in person or at a show or at a card shop, I'd never have any of those cards. So the Larkin stuff is the online outlet, and I don't really use online to buy any of my vintage stuff or my pre-war stuff. I have a list of all of those Reds Hall of Famers from pre-war that ever played for the Reds or managed them. And then I have a list of all the cards where they're pictured in a Reds uniform, at least that I'm aware of. I'm finding new cards all the time, but as I find them, I put them on the list, and that's my card show list. You know, I only pick up those cards when I find them in person at card shows, and I don't go searching for them on the net. All of my eBay searches are Larkin cards.
That's
Nice.
smart.
Well, and I love what he's talking about too, right, Ben? Like, you have to have this balance of like grabbing, like for right now, you know, getting a few A-Rods back. It's been a lot of fun, and I grabbed a few that are like always going to be on eBay, right? The $3 to $5 ones, and then there's some that I've just not bid on that are like 40 or 50 bucks. Cause like, nah, that'll come around again. And yeah, that'll come around again. But like when those, like Luke's saying, he's got that buy it when it shows up list. I think that's something that we've done really well with starting the year. Is there was a Marc-Andre Fleury that should be here next week that, I mean, since I saw that it was going to be made, you know, when I first got my job, I was like, that is the most unique mem card I've ever seen for a goalie. And yes, I had to pay a bit more than I was expecting, but at the same time, it's like, it's so satisfying to like get a card that's at the top of that list and let five, I think I let 10 cards go this whole week, last week on auction. I kind of was like, I need to pay for this. I need to pay for this. So it's awesome to hear that you're doing that too, Luke. I mean, I know that maybe you don't sell as much as we might have to kind of make things work. But I think in essence, what we're hearing here, right, Ben, is like, we're all kind of collecting the same way, right? It's like, we're very specific with what we're grabbing. And I feel like there's a lot of satisfaction in that when you wait and wait and wait. And then the gold, you know, the mirror gold shows up, or the Crusade Red, or, you know, the SPX Ichiro, or, you know, the website's Marc-Andre Fleury, or whatever. I mean, it's so nice to be able to be patient and then have the money to go grab that card that you're like, I don't know when this is going to show up again, right? So I think especially with the 90s, all of us 90s collectors know there's a finite amount, and a lot of those cards rarely ever show up, if at all. What was the Larkin, Luke? Was it the Crusade Red? I remember Ben Schneider put out a video. For anybody that wants to go check him out, super cool dude, Dead Guy Cardboard on YouTube. Really funny name, but great guy, great content. He had never seen a picture of the Red Crusade, I think up to like 3 years ago or something. Am I correct with that?
I think the story that I recall with the Crusade Red was, he had never seen it. And the one had not been graded at that point either until it was at the Atlantic City National, I think. Okay. And one of his buddies found it in a box at the National. It was raw. It had been found in a dollar box at a card store, and that dealer then took it to the National, something along those lines. And his buddy called him after he had already left the show and said, "Hey, this is in this box. Do you want me to arrange for, to buy it for you so that you can get it?" He graded it. It comes back a PSA 10.
Unbelievable.
And it was the only one up to that point. It's just one of those things. How does that happen? And since then, I think there's only been there's two supposedly graded by CSG or CGC now that I've never seen. And then the one that I got is the only other PSA card. So I don't know where they are, but there's only four that I'm aware of.
Yeah, part of the lore of the 90s cards. Like they supposedly exist somewhere out there.
But I'm sort of like you on the 90s stuff too, in that you might be surprised to know, I think in total I'm at like 200 and some Larkin cards out of the thousands that are there in the 90s. Because I also, just like the vintage stuff, I could go out and fill my collection, the checklist of Larkin stuff on eBay right now. And it's all there. So the only stuff I typically will buy on eBay is the rare stuff, the big stuff that I'll find online. And I don't buy a lot of the smaller cards. Those are the ones that I buy at card shows. And my wife's digging through dollar boxes and finding a $10, $15 Larkin that, the guy didn't realize was a nice card. Or the cheaper stuff I will usually pick up at card shows and things like that. I don't buy a lot of the cheap stuff on eBay. Every once in a while, like last week when I bought the Stadium Club, I'll say, yeah, I'll get that. I mean, it's available. I could go search on eBay and find 15 of them right now and pick one and buy it. And there's hundreds of cards like that, and I don't buy those on eBay. It
I
just
do like that now you have the story for that one, right? Oh, I got this card. Oh, I bought it while I was watching these guys talk.
That's right.
That's when I picked it up, and that's the only reason I bought it. Like you attach
Yeah.
buying that card that's there every day to like a memory of the time that I
yeah,
bought
almost every Larkin card I bought online that is in that lower price range that's easy to buy is connected to some story like that. Like something caused me to go on eBay and say, you know what, I want that card, so I'm going to buy it. So
Right.
otherwise, everything just sits on eBay.
Yeah, that's the same boat I am right now, and I was telling Ben, I'm excited to like explore this a little bit. When you're sitting in the office of, you know, one half of the mind of Fleer 90s inserts, and she's like pulling these cards out from her collection. Have you seen these before? And I'm like, have I? Yes, you know, but you know, creating that like connection to that card, it's really helped me appreciate them on a whole new level, right? So I think if I'll pull up first card we've shown, crazy enough. These aren't particularly hard cards, the Master Strokes from Studio, but Greg and Alan and I were having a conversation about them, and they're like, you think about UD Canvas, right? We do those every year, and they're cheap, but the photos are great. They're on the canvas stock. They're great cards, but like to think like, where did it start? Well, it started here, you know, with this set, and you can get the 8x10s, which is really cool. They're numbered out of 2000, which, you know, that's nothing now, but back then that was a pretty significant card, right? And so I've had a lot of fun just letting some of these discussions from this podcast, Greg and Alan, and on the Essential Credentials, you know, people like yourself, the 90s group, a card will pop up and like, I don't remember appreciating it like these guys do. Maybe I should go take a look, right? And so you look through your collection, you go on eBay and you start going, oh, okay, like this card has a little bit more meaning now, like the Stadium Club for You, or, you know, Ben, when we were at the National, you grabbed these different cards from the 90s and we're sitting there talking about how cool they were and innovative they were, but you got it for $5, you know, like it's just that's the type of stuff that I'm really feeding off of right now, as opposed to let me just go grab every single cool little A-Rod that's floating around out there for $5. Well, I wait for like a discussion or a connection to happen. And I definitely recommend that for a lot of collectors. Like go out there and talk with people and see what might, you know, pique your curiosity, right?
For me, that's this card here, and I got a bunch of cards out to show in case we wanted to show cards, because I love it to be more about the cards than me. But watching the Essential Credentials podcast, and you guys were talking about some of the most beautiful 90s cards out there, and for some reason this is one of those sets that had skipped my attention. I'd never really paid much attention to, and that's the Star Factor limited exposure.
Oh geez.
And
yeah, dude.
And you guys talked about this card, and it was on my radar at that point, both sides with that gorgeous refractor finish.
Beautiful.
And after you talked about that immediately went into one of my saved searches, because I wanted to see if I could find that card. And they're super hard to find.
Very
hard. Turns out this popped up for auction on eBay one day, and I don't think a lot of people realized it. It went for way less than it should have.
It's one of those, you have to know the print runs like around 40, I think.
Yeah.
40. Stated print run of 40.
Yep.
And this is the only one that has been graded by any of the grading companies of Larkin. Like, this is the only one that's out there that I've ever seen. And that was only because I think it was Greg that was talking about them one day, and I'm like, well, I haven't seen that. I want to get that. And it popped up and I bought it. And now that I have it in hand, it's one of the shiniest cards I've ever seen. I mean, I don't understand why it doesn't have the cachet in the 90s as some of these other cards, because it's just phenomenal and rare. It has everything going for it. But I guess for the same reason that it was under my radar, it must be under a lot of other people's radars as well. But that's one of those cards that's connected to a story, connected to somebody else. I see it. Somebody said, hey, this is a really cool card. And I say, yeah, I'm interested in that. And I go look for it. And
that's how it all started, right, Ben? Like the early days of that 90s group. That's how it was for us, right? We just kind of
showed something, you're like, I've never seen that. What is that?
Yeah. Or like you didn't see it in a Beckett growing up, or you saw it like listed, right? You went through and you like circled it or whatever. Like, yeah, I'll never have that card, but you never saw a picture of
Yeah.
it. And then
'Cause to that
somebody
point,
shows it.
the
It's
big
crazy.
cards in Beckett at the time, like those have changed. Like Beckett didn't get them all right and take pictures of the ones that were the big ones. The big ones
Right.
have kind of evolved or changed over time. Like that one probably wasn't even one that was really shown in Beckett at the time of one of the big cards from that year or even that quarter, whatever Beckett you picks or monthly. But I was going to show a different card, but I feel like I'm going to switch now because this card kind of has the same feel of that one.
We've all got some cards in front of us. We should definitely end with a little
This
show
one
and
is one of
tell.
those that's like a card for patience where I just waited for a copy of one of these to show up actually at auction so I could just bid on it. And it was still sealed. A lot of these have been cracked and submitted. And I just still have this nostalgia for like really 2001, 2002 was the first time Topps was doing like these sealed copies. So I kind of wanted one in like its original form. And just everything about this design is just so shiny. It's just a completely gorgeous card. I love like the Seattle big in the back with the
Yes,
Mariners
sir.
logo in the back. I mean, just there's nothing to not like about this card. It's everything I look for in a card that's like just gorgeous to look at, gorgeous to display, like really innovative design at the time, bold with the decisions,
sure.
right? And the design. And like you really don't see them pop up, and when you do, they're graded and it's a buy it now price, no best offer.
Yeah.
Someone just
Red
kind of
stupid high.
Yeah, you
Thank
really
you, COVID.
yeah, you just don't see them out there. So this is one of those like I was just patient. I waited. I didn't buy one of those buy it now ones or try to make a deal to just buy one for a price. I waited for one to actually come up where I was like, okay, now I'm happy getting this one for the price that I'm probably going to end up paying here.
Right. Well, I know that we've all got some cards floating around that we'd like to show. I mean, first of all, to that Ichiro, I mean that card. You know, I remember seeing how beautiful those were at first, and then being like $50, $75 when I first got some Ichiros, and to see where they're at now, I'm like, it's absolutely crazy. But I'm really excited to know that you waited it out and got one on auction. That's almost like licking your chops, like, oh, I know I'm going to get this.
I definitely paid less at that auction than I was willing to pay if I could make a deal with someone for a buy it now price. So the patience paid off on that one.
Right. That's awesome. Well, I'll throw it to you, Luke. Like again, we didn't ask this question at the beginning, but like, what other cards are bringing you joy right now when you look at them and you look through your collection?
To get away from the '90s stuff, I was digging for one here that really was tied to a story. I have a 1922 Everett Scott strip card. Now he played for the Reds for like 4 games at the very last year of his career. He got a contract in, but he's the guy that originally was benched for Lou Gehrig that started his streak. People hear the story about the Wally Pipp incident, but he was the one that first, a month before that, where Lou Gehrig got his first game, his first at bat. And so there's a neat connection to history involved in that card. But as far as cards that are currently bringing me joy, I just went to the Strongsville show last month. One of the biggest vintage shows in the country. It's not really a big show, but it's all vintage. So all the big vintage dealers are there. And this particular, I've gotten into collecting the Venezuelan cards from the vintage. Because I finished all the Topps runs of those Hall of Famers from the 50s, 60s, 70s, all those guys. And so now it's given me it's almost like a parallel set to chase. And the Venezuelans are really hard to find. They're super hard to find in good condition. Well, I hadn't even realized it until relatively recently that my mom's favorite player growing up was Dave Concepcion. Legendary Red shortstop, ought to be in the Hall of Fame in my opinion. Maybe one day he'll get in. But so I had his rookie card early on. I bought all of his cards because he was my mom's favorite player, and I was buying all of his cards. And I just realized that he has a card in the '67 Venezuelan set because that set, and unlike the others where they just basically mirrored the top set, that set had the first like 138 cards were Venezuelan Winter League players. And then the next 50 were the Retirado retired player. And then the next 150 were mirrored the top set. Well, in the Venezuelan Winter League, Dave Concepcion played in the Winter League. This is 4 years before his Major League Baseball rookie card in 71 Topps.
I don't think I've ever seen that card.
And he has a Venezuelan Winter League card from 1967 Topps Venezuela that is like a pre-rookie from that. And as soon as I found out about that, I'm like, I got to track that down.
Man.
And
I've only seen the
so,
retired ones. I don't even think I've seen those first 100 you're talking
yeah,
about.
the Winter League cards you just never see them. And mostly because unless you're a hardcore collector of that set, most of those guys are nobodies for the most part.
Right.
But Concepcion turned out to be years later, a pretty darn good baseball player in the major leagues. And so once I found out about that, I wanted to get it. That was my one goal at Strongsville show, was to find that card. In the entire show, I mean, there's not a lot of them out there. There's only like 60 total in the Pop Report.
Wow.
Most of which are ones, because the Venezuelans are known, they were all pasted in albums, so the backs are all destroyed.
Yep.
And so I found one dealer, a pretty well-known dealer there. He had 3 of them. I was talking to him. He had just picked them up in Indianapolis the week before, knowing that he was going to be coming to Ohio, and thought he might be able to get rid of them in Ohio at a show. So he brought them to the Strongsville show, and I picked the best conditioned one that had a completely clean back with no damage, and bought that card. And it's just the coolest card to me that I have bought in a while, because I didn't know it existed, and it's 4 years before Concepcion played in the majors. It's just a really cool card to me. And with that special connection that, again, this is my mom's favorite player. Like when I was a kid, I'm watching Ken Griffey Jr. and Barry Larkin, and she's telling me, "Oh, you should have seen Concepcion play shortstop."
Right.
So, and then there's a connection with Concepcion and Larkin too that brings it together, because his last year was Larkin's first year, and it was sort of a passing of the torch to the next big shortstop. So, I'm really getting a lot of joy out of that card right now.
That's awesome. That is so cool.
Making me think, I think my mom's favorite player for a while was Billy Williams, and I don't have a single Billy Williams card, and I feel like that's a disservice to my collection. That
it's
seems
time to
right.
get one, dude. This is the sign from the universe. It's time to make it happen.
That seems very wrong of me now. I feel guilty now. Thanks, Luke.
Well, I will end with something, since I know we're kind of getting to the end. Speaking of mom's favorite thing, this is going to be a funny story. First of all, she didn't have a favorite baseball player. I don't even know if she could name one right now, other than maybe Griffey, and then Babe Ruth and Pete Rose and some of the names unanimous with the sport. But when I was very young, I did try to play hockey, and we share this favorite story with each other all the time, just making a joke. I remember I got all my hockey gear on for the first time. You're going to your first ever game. And I walked into her room and I said, "Hey, Mom, what's your favorite part of this outfit?" And she didn't say anything for like 10 seconds. So I said, "Nothing." And she started laughing. So like now we've always had this joke, that forever it was nothing. So now that I'm playing goalie, there's obviously a lot more gear and stuff. And so I can't wait. She's not watching this, so I won't need to worry about her seeing this. But when I got into hockey again, as you know, Luke, you've watched since I kind of made that transition to collecting a player in hockey. I had this vision of having a piece of art made for me that I could eventually wear or just put on display. And my good friend painted this mask for me. And this is almost a replica of Fleury's mask that he wore when he won their first cup. And I mean, you can argue the World Series might be the hardest championship to win, but I would say the Stanley Cup might be even harder. Just, based upon how much, effort and energy they're expelling every time they're on the ice. But so now I'm pretty sure when my mother comes and sees me play at like a 40-year-old, 36 years later, that when I ask her what her favorite part is, it'll be this, because on the back I've got some tributes to my family, including the weight.
Oh, nice.
That represents my mother. After we lost my stepfather, her strength has just been like ridiculous. And she used to lift weights for a living. So like we still have a bodybuilding picture of her on the fridge at home. And it's just like, you used to look like that, but Yeah, so I wanted to share that with everybody. It's whether it's a card or something like this or a piece of art, which I have some of those up there, like it's all because of a personal connection, and a deep meaning. And I just love hearing all the different stories of our guests like Luke or Ben and I, like sharing what different things mean to us. And it's so cool that you have a card that represents, your mother in your collection, because again, without these sentimental connections to our cards, I think that would also really pull us away from what is truly at the heart of why we do what we do, right? And so, yeah, that's pretty darn cool. Ben, do you want to wrap it up for us? Is there another card there that's like really bringing you a lot of joy, or item for that matter?
I have a card, and since you went hockey, I guess I can go hockey. I got this
look at
guy
this
in the
guy.
mail.
Yes.
So
golf clap.
I'm officially doing it. Matt and I talked. I mean, I would not own a single hockey card if it weren't for Matt. And I finally said, I want to do it. I've seen Upper Deck stuff. It looks so incredible. It's time for me to get involved. And I'm here in Nashville, so the Predators are technically my local team. And really, to the point of some of the conversation we've had tonight, like, now I have a really cool patch card of this guy. I want to go watch him play. I'm going to be like going and attending some Predators games. I'm going to be talking with Matt, trying to figure out what are the best. He's already sent me some ideas of like the best case hits or SSPs to go for.
That's right.
So I'm about to start my hockey collecting journey. It will be almost entirely inspired by Matt. I'll be mirroring his Fleury collection.
No, that's super cool. I mean, I'm sure, Luke, that have you heard from anybody ever, Luke, where it's like, hey, I started collecting this because you inspired me, or like your collection made me think to go grab this one card. Have you had one of those moments before?
Not that I can think of. I'm sure there are times people have reached out, but again, I'm not really plugged in to the communities that well. So it may have happened, but I can't think of any instances.
It's probably the other way around, though, right? Right. Sorry about that, Ben. But I was thinking, like he had mentioned, we've done so many episodes. Luke's been on, probably watched like 50 or more episodes that we've done on this channel. But I love, I don't know about you guys, but I love hearing, hey, I saw a blank card. I went out and grabbed one. I cannot believe how amazing. Just like Luke was saying with the limited exposures, dude, even like the back and the front and back ones with different players, even those limited exposures are insanely beautiful. So I love those moments where either myself or somebody reaches out and says, hey, Ben, you guys were talking about this card. I went out and grabbed it. I cannot believe it's such a beautiful card. Like helping each other out and motivating each other. I always like hearing those stories, right? And Ben's now good luck not looking for amazing patch cards, because that's one thing our company has on the other card companies is we have the best game used material in anything.
Almost
so
in a little, it's different from what Luke does, but in a similar way, it's another sort of side quest for me, and it's not one that's as expensive as like the Ichiro and Barry Bonds and the pre-war vintage stuff that I go after. So it's almost like this will be a new kind of like relief, fun. The cards just look awesome. I'm getting into a sport, like totally different kind of outlet and kind of collecting I'll get to do over here.
Right.
It'd be kind of a different relief from these things that are big that I'm looking for bonds or whatever. Like there's a different collecting strategy that goes into that. So this will just be something totally different out of left field, and I get to go like learn a lot about Upper Deck hockey cards. So new adventure.
Well, once if Cincinnati ever gets a hockey team, a professional hockey team, hit me up, Luke. I'll fill you in on any of the info you need. Maybe there'll be a PWHL team someday. Who knows? But yeah, I think to wrap it up, I have a fun idea here. Luke, we talked about how, in a way, some of these top cards, you talk about them on our podcast, or you talk about it, in different chats on Instagram, and they kind of manifest themselves. So I think it'd be fun for each of us to share what is at the top of the, as Luke has coined, buy it when you see it list, because I think that list is kind of separate from like the dream want list, like I might never own one, but what card is at the top of the buy it when you see it list? I'll start with Luke, our guest of honor. What would you say is at the top of that list?
My buy it when I see it list is down to 5 cards of Larkin.
Wow, congrats.
You can share them all if you want, if you know them all.
And yeah, I mean, I've ranked them at least in the sense on my
Let's
list.
manifest them for you.
I don't know if I'm in a position to pick up these 5, so don't get them all out there at the same time, please.
That would be something.
But the 98 PMG is up there.
That's my number one.
Too. The 24 karat is on there. One popped up. The one, I think Alan had owned it at one point. It has a print line on the top, and he sold it, and then it went to auction. I missed it by like $50, and part of me regrets it, and part of me doesn't. But I really haven't seen another one for sale since then. But that's up there on the list.
Okay.
The 98 Essential Credentials now. I missed out on that when the last this credential or the Crusades Red was up for auction for the first time when it was raw. That went up for a buy it now on eBay while that auction was going on. So I wasn't really actively looking at that time. And so I missed that card, and the guy ended up taking a best offer of like $700 less than it was listed for. And I was like, man, I would have snatched that up.
For sure.
But I missed that one. So that one's pretty high on the list. And then I don't have the 97 totally certified gold. I'd like to have that too. So
okay, nice. Well, let's hope they all don't pop up at once, because then you might have to sell some stuff. Hey, honey, do you want to refinance the house? Or yeah. Okay, nice. Well, I mean, it'd be great, now that you've kind of shared them, it'd be awesome to see you maybe get one before the end of the year, right? Because those are big enough cars that even though they do pop up for insane prices, you can sometimes, finagle with the seller. What about yourself, Ben? Is there a card or two that are at the top of the buy it when you see it list?
Yeah, the problem is for me, those cards that sit at the top of my list, I would have to make sure I have the money to buy it when I see it.
Right.
Like there's the 2001. So for Ichiro, it's the 2001 Upper Deck Ultimate Collection, which has him, that like amazing picture on card auto. It's
such an amazing
just
card,
one of the
dude.
coolest, photographs of him from the 2001 season.
Yeah.
Then there's the gold refractor. The thing with those is they actually come up a little bit more frequently than they used to. People were kind of holding them for a long time. I don't know if this happens with like Larkin stuff where it comes in waves, but that card comes in like every 2 or 3 year wave. You won't see any. Then you see all 7 that sold 3 years ago get listed again.
Yeah.
You don't see any. It's like they get handed around between each collectors so everybody can have it for a little while and then sell it again. So it's at the top of the list, but I'm always kind of hesitant when I see a few of them pop up because I see the other copies that sold from 2021.
Mm-hmm.
So it's there. So really, I think for me right now, the number one is the Ultimate Collection. Like I would figure out what I needed to move to get one. I am a little bit picky because that one was like a glossy card.
Mm-hmm.
I know the more you look at a card that you really, really want, the more you notice the little things you would not like about the card if you were to get a specific copy. So I am like pretty picky about that autograph on that one. Like I could take some surface damage, but somewhere you'd used a pen where it got like streaky and like I can't do that much on a card and then have it like something about it look weird. Like that would just bug me. To be honest, if like for Barry Bonds, one of my top ones is the 24K, 24 karat. But a print line is almost like I couldn't. The price is so huge that what I would have to move to get one, I couldn't do a print line. Like I couldn't do something where it didn't look exactly right. So I kind of feel the same way about the Ichiro. Like I could move some things and get these two if they pop up, but I'm going to be picky about it.
Good. Well, as you should be, right? I think sometimes you can afford to be picky, and sometimes you cannot. I think
the 24K though is maybe you can't be picky. There's only 24. Period. It's kind of like it is what it is.
Print lines, though, man, I think maybe the limited exposures, it's okay because it doesn't stand out. But on 24 karat, it's just like it's so blatantly obvious, and
it's everything the card
spending that much, it should be perfect. In essence, I know there's two trains of thought on that, but I'm kind of with Luke where he's like, I'm kind of not that bummed that I lost it because I had a print line. Like I'm in the same boat. Like most of my cards, I'd like them to be immaculate, other than like, some typical 90s stuff, like Pacific
Sure.
cards on the back. Just don't look at the back of the cards. they just
You just
don't.
play the front only.
No, they're just not. Well, I mean, this isn't on the buy it if I can see it, but the 98 PMG, I think about that card almost every day. And, I don't regret not buying it for 500, buy it now all those years ago, because I wasn't buying cards that expensive. I was sticking to 100 or less. But I think it's the one card, especially working with Jean now, that I would love to be able to buy and show her that I own a copy of it, and then have her on the podcast and talk about that card again, just because it's such a perfect parallel. Like, it really is. I can't think of anybody that doesn't think that's an awesome card, except maybe Alan, but he'll come around one day.
He'll come around.
But I think for me, it's more for A-Rod, it's probably the Quantum Leap or the holographics from Ionics. Those two cards are just perfect cards. I don't think there's anything wrong with them. And then for Marc-Andre Fleury, I would say, there's a card from the Cup that's got 2 patches and an auto, and he's in his championship, set up, and it's a horizontal card. It's just a beautiful card. So hopefully one of those before the end of the year. Every time I see like a seller list a bunch of, you guys ever have this happen with like Larkin or Bonds? You see a seller and he lists a lot of like fire cards over and over again. You're like, uh-oh, is it going to happen? Is he going to put, this one on there? And it's like, oh man.
Actually, the worst is when they do that and it's something that you want, but they're all 99-cent auctions, and you start to see there's like 40 people watching, 50 people watching. You're like, oh,
yeah,
I can't win them all.
We've all done this, right? You see card pop up for auction or best offer or no best offer. You send a message, hey, can you add a best offer option on this sucker? And by the time you respond, somebody's bid on it. It's like, dang it, But anyway, I know we've gone a little bit longer than we normally do, but it's awesome because Luke, my closing thoughts here. It was awesome being able to meet you, but also getting to hear your story. Surprised me in a good way. I love the connection that you have with your wife and with your family, with the hobby. I love hearing stuff like that because I think we all want to aspire to continue to have those types of connections. And so my only wish now is that whether I'm at the National this year working or I'm there next year working or on my own, that I hope we get a chance to meet, because it's really been a pleasure having you on here.
Yeah, well, I really appreciate you guys having me on. It's been great talking to you. My wife's already booked a Airbnb in Chicago, so we'll be there for a couple of days at least, and so hopefully we'll run into you guys.
Yeah, I'll be there this year, Luke. So I'll make sure to reach out and connect with you.
Sweet.
Awesome.
Well, I love to hear that. Ben, any closing thoughts on the episode before we say goodbye?
Echo what you said. It's really great to actually meet you and get to hear more about your story. It's an excellent reminder of what makes the hobby so fun and what keeps it like entertaining and keeps the steam going even when you're struggling to find something you want to pick up. That you're creating memories and friendships or building relationships or making a stronger bond with your family by doing this. I think it's just excellent for that reason.
For sure. Thanks again for those reminders. I mean, it's we had, I don't know if you caught this, I think maybe Luke at the end, but the dad cast that we did when we had our dads on here, and and again, that was such a wonderful reminder of where it all started for us. And I think it's great for us to try to, again, be in that headspace as much as you can, and maybe avoid some of the hype of the hobby. I know it's hard to avoid that because it's everywhere, but it's such a good reminder of where we need to be grounded in with this hobby. Right. And so, thanks again for coming on. Luke, do you have any other closing thoughts before we say goodbye to everyone?
Nope. I appreciate your show, and I look forward to watching it every time you post it, and keep collecting.
All right, man. We'll look forward to seeing you on the next one. And thank you, everybody. I know we didn't get too many comments in here. I know I didn't get a chance to show Maze's comment here. Maze, Jackson's been amazing. He's not in the States, so if he catches one, he's usually either up really late or up really early. So we appreciate you making it, dude. And Henry, of course, was in here. Doug, thanks everybody, even if you didn't comment, for watching. We appreciate it. And exciting news, if you like the Eccentric Credentials, the 90s theme, Greg and Alan have fired it back up. And so the three of us are going to be on next weekend. So as soon as we know when, we will let you know. And hopefully we get Ben on there, so we have all four of us talking 90s, and then we can get Luke and different people. So we're excited to be doing that again. But yeah, thank you everyone, and we'll see you in a couple weeks.